Give her one tissue, then remove her. Marcus Reed's mop stopped beneath the marriage counter as every face turned toward the abandoned bride in the cheap ivory dress. He set the handle against his navy uniform, knelt beside her, and offered one folded tissue while his other hand protected the wrinkled marriage license from Celeste Caldwell's reaching fingers. Behind the counter, Bernice Cole stared at the last name printed above the raised seal. She said no, Marcus said quietly. The paper stays with her. 3 hours earlier, Riverton City Hall had smelled of lemon disinfectant, old stone, and the burnt coffee someone had left warming too long in the employee room. Marcus had started his shift before sunrise, pushing his gray cleaning cart through the marble corridors while the building still belonged to echoes. A thin ribbon of water had crept beneath the marriage counter from a leaking umbrella stand, and he was wiping it away when the wedding party arrived. Celeste Caldwell entered first in a pearl-colored suit, smiling at the clerk as though they were old friends. Her son Ethan followed in a fitted charcoal jacket, his jaw tight, one hand locked around his phone. Amara came last. Her ivory dress was clean but plainly altered by hand. The left sleeve sat slightly higher than the right, and there was no bouquet in her arms, only a manila folder pressed against her ribs. Marcus noticed the folder because she held it the way soldiers carried sealed orders through rain. Close, careful, never unattended. Celeste spoke softly at first. She complimented the building, thanked Bernice for accommodating the family, and apologized for what she called a delicate misunderstanding. Then Ethan opened the folder, saw the final page, and asked Amara why she had not signed it. Because it wasn't there yesterday, Amara said. Ethan looked at his mother before he looked at the woman he was supposed to marry. That small movement changed the air. Celeste placed a comforting hand on Amara's shoulder, but her fingers pressed hard enough to crease the fabric. "You're overwhelmed," she said, smiling for the strangers watching. "Let us handle this properly." Amara stepped away. From her touch, her breath came shallow and fast. "I said I'm not signing that page." Ethan's face reddened. Celeste whispered something near his ear, and within seconds he walked toward the glass doors. Amara called his name once. He did not turn around. The doors closed behind him with a hydraulic sigh, leaving her beneath the fluorescent lights while two waiting couples stared and a man near the wall lifted his phone to record. Celeste's expression remained composed. "This is what happens when people hide where they come from," she announced with wounded dignity. "My son was deceived." Amara sat because her knees gave way, not because anyone offered her a chair. The folder slipped open across her lap. Marcus saw the embossed marriage license, a page of signatures, and a thicker final sheet whose edges did not line up with the others. Celeste pushed the tissue box across the counter toward him as if assigning another spill. Marcus looked at Amara's shaking hands, then at Celeste's hand moving past the first 6 pages toward the last one only. He placed the tissue in Amara's palm and asked whether she wanted the woman to take her papers. "No," Amara whispered. Marcus rested 2 fingers on the corner of the folder. Celeste's smile tightened. "You clean this building," she said. "You do not interpret legal matters." Marcus did not raise his voice. "I'm not interpreting anything. I'm listening to the person holding the document." When Amara lowered her head, a black onyx ring slipped from beneath her dress on a narrow chain. A silver W caught the overhead light. The same letter was carved into the bronze Whitmore Civic Foundation plaque behind Bernice's shoulder. Bernice looked from the ring to the license, then slowly lifted the top page closer to the lamp. Celeste reached again, this time directly for the final sheet. "Page 7B is a private family attachment," she said. Bernice had not told anyone the page number. Marcus saw the clerk's eyes sharpen before her face went pale at the legal name printed above the seal. Bernice's face went pale, but Celeste moved before the clerk could speak. "That name proves nothing." "Then why did you know the page number?" Marcus asked. "Because this family has already suffered enough interference." Her voice stayed measured, almost compassionate, yet her fingers remained suspended over the final sheet like a hand waiting for an unlocked door. The fluorescent lights hummed above them. Somewhere beyond the glass doors, an elevator chimed, and the ordinary sound made the silence at the marriage counter feel even sharper. Bernice lowered the license without stamping it. "No one removes anything until I verify the file." Celeste turned toward the people holding up their phones and softened her expression. "Of course, we all want this handled properly. My son is devastated, and this young woman is clearly overwhelmed." Amara's grip tightened around the tissue Marcus had given her. The thin paper had already absorbed a dark crescent of tears, but she did not wipe her face again. She stared at the last page Celeste wanted and seemed to shrink farther into the ivory dress. Footsteps approached from the main corridor. Harold Pierce, the facilities manager, arrived with 2 security officers walking half a pace behind him. Harold wore a gray suit, a polished city badge, and the patient expression of a man accustomed to explaining why rules mattered more than people. "Marcus, Mr. Pierce, step away from the counter." Harold did not look at the papers first. He looked at Marcus's uniform, the damp knees where he had knelt on the freshly mopped floor, and the cleaning cart standing beside the bronze plaque. His eyes lingered on the mop handle as if it settled the question of who belonged in the conversation. "Mrs. Caldwell tells me you interfered with a private legal matter. She tried to take a document after the woman holding it said no. You are not authorized to determine ownership of marriage records." Harold's tone remained quiet enough to sound reasonable. One of the security officers shifted his weight, leather creaking at his belt, while the other glanced at the phones recording from the waiting area. Celeste folded her hands at her waist. "I don't blame him. He probably thought he was helping." The sentence landed softly, but it turned Marcus from a witness into a simple man who had misunderstood something beyond his station. A woman near the wall whispered that janitors should not touch legal files. Another murmured that Marcus was probably hoping for a reward. He heard both comments. He did not look toward either voice. "I never removed the file," he said. "I asked whether she was giving it willingly." Harold exhaled through his nose. "That distinction is not yours to make." He reached across the counter and placed a withdrawal form in front of Amara. Her name had already been typed across the top as Amara Brooks. The boxes beneath it were checked in neat black ink. Applicant requests cancellation. Applicant declines further verification. Applicant accepts return of supporting documents. "Sign here," Harold said. "This will end the disruption and allow everyone to leave with dignity." Amara looked down at the pen he offered. The metal tip trembled beneath the lights because Harold's hand was not as steady as his voice. "I didn't request this. It is a standard form. I didn't ask to withdraw anything. You are distressed." Celeste leaned closer, careful not to touch her this time. "No one is punishing you, Amara. We are trying to protect you from making this worse." The word protect made Amara flinch. Marcus saw it in the sudden lift of her shoulder and the way her thumb disappeared beneath the edge of the license. Celeste saw it too, but interpreted it for the room before Amara could speak. "She is not in a condition to make independent decisions." Bernice's eyes rose slowly. The phrase sounded too complete, too polished. Not frightened, not angry, legal. Marcus stepped away from the counter as Harold had ordered, leaving a clear path for the officers. Then he removed his yellow cleaning gloves one finger at a time and laid them across the handle of his cart. "Please put in writing that the city is taking a document from someone who has said she does not consent." Harold's jaw tightened. "Do not make this harder than it needs to be. I'm asking for the record to match what is happening." "You are a custodian." "Yes, sir." Marcus did not say it with shame. He said it the way a person might state the time or the color of a wall, something true that did not decide whether his eyes worked. Amara turned toward him. "Please stop." Her voice was barely louder than the air vent. "You have a daughter. I heard you mention her earlier. You could lose your job." Marcus looked at the form, not at Celeste, not at the cameras. "Do you want to sign it?" Amara swallowed. "No." Then I heard what I needed to hear. Something changed behind her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but a momentary break in the certainty that every person offering help would eventually demand control. Bernice reached for the form. She examined the header, then the transaction line printed in small gray type at the bottom. I'm not stamping this. Harold's face hardened. On what basis? The applicant denies requesting it. The applicant is confused. Confusion requires verification. It does not erase consent. For the first time, the security officers looked at one another instead of at Marcus. Celeste's smile remained, but the tendons along her neck stood out beneath her pearls. Harold pulled a suspension notice from his leather folder. He wrote Marcus's name, checked the box marked interference with official operations, and signed with a sharp downward stroke. Your access is suspended pending review. Hand me your badge and keys. Marcus unclipped the city badge from his chest. The plastic had a hairline crack near his photograph, and the metal clip left a small fold in the navy fabric. He placed it in Harold's palm. Then he removed the brass key ring from his belt, each key striking the next with a dull, familiar sound. Nia would recognize that sound when he came through their apartment door. Tonight she would not hear it. You need to leave the restricted area, Harold said. Marcus moved beside the public benches, no longer an employee with access, only a citizen in worn work boots. Celeste relaxed by half an inch. Harold turned the withdrawal form toward Bernice again, covering the bottom line with his thumb. But as the paper slid across the marble, Marcus caught sight of the printed timestamp beneath Harold's hand. 8:20 a.m. The wall clock above the marriage counter read 8:57. Amara had not entered the building until 8:31. The timestamp stayed in Marcus's mind after Harold covered it with his thumb. 8:20 a.m., 11 minutes before Amara had entered Riverton City Hall. He did not accuse anyone. He had learned long ago that a fact spoken too early could be buried beneath louder voices. Instead, he watched Bernice slide the withdrawal form beneath her blotter and place one hand over it, as if protecting a flame from wind. Mr. Reed, you need to leave. I understand. Then why are you still standing there? Harold's voice remained polite, but his fingers tightened around Marcus's brass keys. The keys struck one another softly in his palm, a small sound Marcus had heard at the end of every shift for 6 years. Without them, his belt felt strangely light. Beyond the public benches, Nia sat in a molded plastic chair near the employee alcove, her purple backpack between her sneakers. The city's summer day program had closed that morning because of a plumbing problem, so she had spent the first hour of his shift drawing on scrap paper and reading a library book. Now she watched him with the careful stillness children used when they sensed that adults were hiding bad news. Marcus crossed to her and crouched beside the chair. Are we going home? She asked. Not yet. Did you do something wrong? He straightened one bent strap on her backpack. I stopped working before the floor was finished. Nia looked past him toward Amara, who sat with the marriage papers against her chest and the damp tissue folded in her palm. Because she was crying? Marcus nodded once. Nia considered that answer, then reached into the front pocket of her backpack and pulled out a yellow paper flower she had made from a discarded city notice. One petal was larger than the others, and the center had been colored orange with a worn crayon. Can I give her this? You can offer it. She gets to decide. Nia walked only as far as the end of the bench. She held out the flower without touching Amara. You don't have any real ones, she said. This one doesn't need water. Amara looked at the uneven petals. For a moment, the tightness in her face gave way to something softer and more painful. Thank you, she whispered, accepting it with both hands. Celeste watched from beside the counter, her expression composed. This is becoming unnecessarily theatrical, she told Harold. Children should not be involved in adult disputes. Nia returned immediately to Marcus and slipped her hand into his. She had not heard enough to understand the papers, but she understood the tone. Marcus squeezed her fingers once. He did not answer Celeste. Bernice removed her glasses and cleaned them with the edge of her cardigan. Amara has the right to request a certified copy before any identity review proceeds. Harold's head turned sharply. The record is under dispute. The original is under review. Her right to a copy has not been suspended. Bernice looked at Amara. The fee is $6. Amara reached toward the side of her dress, then stopped. There were no pockets. Her eyes moved to the glass doors through which Ethan had left. My purse is in his car. You can pay by card. My wallet is in the purse. We can wait. Celeste spoke with gentle finality. There is no need to prolong this humiliation. Once she has rested, the family's attorneys can handle everything privately. Amara stared at the raised seal on the marriage license. Her phone lay beside her, its screen showing 3% battery. Marcus knew what was in his own front pocket without checking. 6 folded $1 bills. 4 were for lunch from the vending machines. 2 completed the bus fare that would take him and Nia home after his shift. His suspension meant there would be no employee ride from the maintenance crew, and the next bus stop within walking distance required crossing 3 long blocks in the afternoon heat. Their electric bill was folded in the same pocket, marked past due in red. Marcus slipped his hand inside, felt the rough edge of the notice and removed only the money. He flattened the 6 bills on the marble counter. Print the copy. Harold gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You have already lost access to the building, Marcus. Do not turn this into something more serious. I'm paying a public fee. Celeste looked at the worn bills as if they proved something about him. This is exactly how people get drawn into situations they do not understand. Marcus met Bernice's eyes. Is $6 the correct amount? It is. Then print the copy. Amara rose halfway from the bench. No. You need that money. So do you. I can repay you. That is not why I'm doing it. I could repay you 100 times over. Marcus pushed the bills toward Bernice. I'm not selling you $6. I'm making sure the truth has another copy. The words left no room for gratitude as debt. Amara sat down again, still holding Nia's paper flower. She looked at Marcus as though trying to find the hidden condition and becoming more unsettled when none appeared. Bernice fed the original through the scanner. The machine woke with a low mechanical hum, drawing each page beneath a strip of white light. Marcus watched the thicker final sheet pass through last. Its edge lifted slightly before the roller caught it, and he noticed again that it did not sit square with the others. The printer released a warm stack smelling faintly of toner. Bernice checked every page, pressed the city's raised seal into the upper corner, and printed a receipt with the transaction number and exact time. Marcus read the time once, then folded the receipt around the copy rather than putting it in his pocket. The original needs to stay protected, he said. Bernice found a transparent evidence sleeve used for damaged public records. Marcus placed the marriage papers inside without rearranging them. He wrote the time along the sleeve's edge, then asked Bernice to sign across the adhesive seal. Celeste's eyes narrowed. He is not a records officer.
No, Bernice replied.
But he is documenting what he touched. Marcus returned the sealed sleeve to Amara. The black onyx ring rested against the ivory fabric above it, the silver W catching the scanner's fading light. He did not ask what the letter meant. He took the old charging cable from the side pocket of his cleaning cart and plugged Amara's phone into an outlet beside the bench. Then he draped his lightweight work jacket across the cold plastic seat next to Nia, giving Amara a place to set the papers without putting them on the floor. How are we getting home? Nia asked quietly. Marcus glanced toward the bright windows at the end of the corridor. We'll walk to the next route. Is it far? A little. Nia accepted this and opened her library book again. She did not complain about the heat or ask why $6 mattered. Amara heard every word. Her thumb moved over the crooked edge of the paper flower. Celeste had already turned away, dismissing the payment as the foolish sacrifice of a man too poor to understand the people around him. She stepped into the hallway, lifted her phone and called someone listed on the screen as C. Price. Her voice was low, but Marcus caught one sentence when the glass door swung inward. They made a certified copy. Less than 2 minutes later, Bernice's monitor flashed red, and the marriage file disappeared behind a message none of them had requested. Record locked. Identity review requested. Bernice looked at the $6 receipt in Marcus's hand, then at the sealed copy resting against Amara's heart. and understood that his smallest act of kindness had preserved the only version of the truth someone had just tried to place beyond their reach. The red words remained on Bernice's monitor. Record locked. Identity review requested. Harold saw them from across the room and immediately stepped closer. There. The system has flagged the file. After the certified copy was printed, Marcus said. That does not make the review improper. Celeste returned from the hallway with her phone already lowered, her face composed again. The fluorescent light flattened every expression, but Amara noticed the brief relief in Celeste's eyes when she saw the red screen. Harold pointed toward the sealed sleeve against Amara's chest. That copy may now be part of a disputed record. Amara's arms tightened around it. It was valid when it was printed. We do not know that yet. The receipt does, Marcus said. The room slowed by a fraction. He unfolded the narrow strip of paper Bernice had printed and placed it on the marble beneath the white counter light. The transaction number, terminal ID, and exact time sat in clean black type. Harold looked at it without touching it. Celeste spoke. Before he could. A receipt only proves that money changed hands. It does not prove the identity behind the document. Her explanation was reasonable enough to quiet two of the people still watching from the benches. Even Amara looked uncertain. She had used the name Brooks in her daily life for years. To anyone outside the sealed record system, the name Whitmore could sound less like a fact than a desperate claim made after a wedding collapsed. Marcus did not argue otherwise. That is true, he said. Celeste blinked, almost disappointed that he had not given her something easier to attack. Then you understand why this must be handled privately. I understand the name still has to be verified. He moved the receipt beside the withdrawal form Bernice had hidden beneath her blotter. I also understand one of these was created before she arrived. Harold's fingers pressed against the edge of the counter. You are drawing conclusions from a timestamp you were never authorized to review. I read what was visible. You have already been suspended. That does not change the time. Amara turned toward the glass doors, as though measuring the distance to the street. Running had protected her before. It had kept her away from interviews, court filings, and people who smiled while asking for signatures. But the sealed copy in her arms felt heavier than paper. It felt like the first thing no one had managed to take from her. My legal name is not Brooks, she said. The admission was quiet, but it shifted every face toward her. Celeste's mouth softened into practiced concern. Amara, you do not need to invent anything else. I am not inventing it. Then explain it. Amara looked at Marcus, but he did not nod or encourage her. He left the choice where it belonged. Brooks was my mother's name, she said at last. I have used it for years. Why? Harold asked. Because it made people ask fewer questions. That is not an answer. It is the only one I am giving right now. The old instinct to control her returned to Celeste's posture. She tilted her head and lowered her voice. This secrecy is exactly what frightened Ethan. You cannot expect a family to trust a woman who changes her identity whenever it suits her. Amara flinched, though less visibly than before. Marcus noticed her thumb moving over the uneven petal of Nia's paper flower. Did Ethan know your legal name? Bernice asked. He knew there were things I was not ready to make public. That means no, Celeste replied. It means he knew I was protecting something. From your future husband? From anyone who believed marriage gave them ownership. Silence settled across the counter. Harold looked toward the security officers, uncomfortable with how many phones were still raised. This conversation is no longer appropriate for a public area. Bernice collected the sealed original and the certified copy. Then we used the interview room. The small room behind the records counter smelled of toner and old carpet. A narrow table divided the space, and a single fluorescent tube flickered above it with a faint electrical buzz. Harold allowed Bernice, Amara, and Marcus inside only after insisting that one security officer remain by the door. Celeste stood in the hallway where she could see through the wired glass. Nia sat outside with Marcus's work jacket around her shoulders and her library book open on her lap. Amara placed the sealed sleeve on the table. That last page was not in the packet yesterday, she said. What does it do? Bernice asked. It gives a spouse temporary authority over emergency financial decisions. Temporary? That is what Ethan called it. Marcus looked at the thicker final sheet through the clear plastic. May I look at the paper without reading the private information? Amara hesitated. He had already paid for the copy, protected the original, and refused to ask what the W meant. But caution had kept her alive inside rooms where kindness usually came with forms attached. Only the paper, she said. Bernice opened the certified copy, not the original. Marcus placed blank sheets over the names, addresses, and financial clauses. He did not hold the page up like a revelation. He simply moved it beneath the table lamp and compared its edge to the pages before it. This one is heavier, he said. Harold folded his arms. Paper stock varies. It can. Marcus ran one finger near the binding without touching the ink. 2 old punctures sat above the fresh staple, slightly wider apart. These holes do not. Celeste's voice came through the partly open door. The packet was restapled after a routine review. Bernice looked toward her. Who told you it had been restapled? Celeste paused only a second. Ethan mentioned the documents were reorganized. The answer sounded plausible, but Amara's breathing changed. Ethan never had the packet after yesterday. Marcus shifted the page beneath the lamp. A purple semicircle from Bernice's verification stamp crossed the bottom of page 6, but its matching half was absent from page 7. Instead, the final sheet had a clean lower margin and a newer fold running vertically near the center. Bernice leaned closer. I stamp across adjoining pages after intake. Was this packet stamped yesterday? Marcus asked. Yes. Then the next page should carry the other half. Harold moved toward the table. That proves nothing except that someone may have replaced a damaged page. Who? Amara asked. No one answered. Marcus adjusted the blank cover sheet until a line of tiny gray characters appeared along the bottom edge of the disputed page. A printer code. Bernice removed her glasses, wiped them, and read it again. That is not one of my machines. Harold's voice hardened. There are dozens of printers in this building. Not with that prefix. Bernice pointed to the first 4 characters. That belongs to the legal copy room on the 2nd floor. Celeste stepped into the doorway. Our attorney reviewed documents there this morning. There is nothing unusual about that. Marcus looked up. What time? Before the ceremony. What time? Celeste's eyes moved to Harold. Around 8:30. Bernice turned to her computer and opened the access log. The screen cast a blue light across her face as she scrolled. A guest badge had opened the legal copy room at 8:12 a.m. The printer had produced one 7-page document at 8:14. The guest name field should have shown an attorney or sponsor. Instead, it read administrative override. Harold reached toward the keyboard. That log is restricted. Bernice moved her hand away before he could close it. Marcus did not accuse him. He only asked the simplest question in the room. Who has the authority to replace a guest's name with that phrase? Harold looked at the screen, then at the city badge clipped to his own belt. Outside the wired glass, Celeste's hand tightened around her phone. Amara lowered her eyes to the sealed marriage license and, for the first time, stopped looking at it like proof of a failed wedding. The thicker page had been printed 11 minutes before she and Ethan entered the building, and someone with administrative access had erased the name of the person who printed it. Harold did not answer Marcus's question. His hand remained near the keyboard, while the blue glow of the access log sharpened the strain around his mouth. That information is restricted. Then preserve it. You are no longer an employee. The log does not stop existing because my badge is gone. The fluorescent tube above the interview table flickered once, then steadied. Outside the wired glass, a chair scraped across the floor and stopped. Even the people waiting near the marriage counter had gone quiet enough for the air conditioning vent to sound like distant rain. Bernice moved the mouse away from Harold's reach. I am placing a hold on the access log. Celeste stepped into the room with a sympathetic smile. Before this becomes something it is not, perhaps we should all take a breath. Amara needs privacy, not an audience. I need my record left alone, Amara said. Of course you do. Then stop trying to take it. Celeste's smile weakened, but only for a moment. She turned to Bernice. Surely there is a proper way to verify whether this young woman is who she claims to be. There is, Bernice said, and it does not involve your permission. Bernice closed the access log but did not release the preservation hold. She opened a separate state verification portal and rotated the monitor so only Amara could see it. I am going to ask you 3 questions from the sealed identity record. No one else answers. No one helps. Amara's hands tightened around Nia's paper flower. She glanced at Marcus, but he stepped back from the table, making it clear he would not watch the screen. Date of birth? Bernice asked. Amara answered. Full legal name of your mother? Amara's voice caught before she gave it. Previous residential address associated with your state identification? She answered that too, including the apartment number. Bernice typed slowly, compared the signature Amara made on a digital pad with the state sample and waited. A small green box appeared. Identity match. Manual review required. It did not prove the last page was fraudulent. It did prove Amara had not invented the identity printed on the marriage license. The security officer at the door lowered his eyes. Harold's fingers stopped tapping against his belt. Celeste placed one hand on the back of an empty chair. A partial match is not a final determination. Correct, Bernice said, which is why no one is removing the document. Marcus watched Amara's shoulders drop by less than an inch. It was not relief. It was the first space her body had been allowed to occupy without someone immediately correcting her. Bernice saved the result locally but did not upload it to the locked file. Then she opened a staff-only notes panel. Someone is watching this record, she said quietly. The lock request came too quickly. Marcus looked at the legal copy room code, then at the red warning still reflected faintly on the darkened screen. Can the person watching see internal routing notes? Harold answered too fast. Only authorized staff. Bernice looked at him. That was not the question. Marcus kept his voice even. Put in a note that the disputed final page has been moved to basement archives for physical inspection. Celeste's head turned sharply. Why would you announce where evidence is being stored? We would not, Marcus said. Because it will not be there. Harold gave a humorless laugh. You are proposing a trap inside a government system. I am proposing a false routing note that harms no one and changes no record. And if no one reacts, then we learn nothing. Amara studied Marcus's face. He did not look pleased with the idea. He looked careful. That mattered more. Bernice typed the note. Page 7B transferred to basement archives. Physical review pending. She saved it only to the internal staff panel. 3 minutes passed. The wall clock clicked from 9:06 to 9:07. Nia sat outside with Marcus's jacket around her shoulders, tracing one finger beneath the lines of her library book. When she glanced through the glass and saw her father still standing calmly, she relaxed enough to turn the page. At 9:08, the desk phone beside the records cabinet rang. No one moved on the first ring. On the second, Bernice pressed the speaker button. Marriage records. A man's voice came through, smooth and controlled. I need to speak with the custodian who handled the Whitmore file. Amara went still. Marcus looked at Bernice, and she nodded once. This is Marcus Reed. Mr. Reed, I understand there has been confusion. I represent parties interested in resolving it without damaging anyone's reputation. Your name? That is not important. Then I cannot help you. A breath passed through the speaker. My office can provide reasonable compensation for your inconvenience if you retrieve the final page from basement storage and turn it over to facilities management. Harold's face drained of color. The chair beneath Celeste's hand creaked as her grip tightened. Marcus did not look at either of them. What is your name? You are being offered a way out of a serious employment problem. Your name? your title and the legal authority for your request. The man's tone lost some of its polish. Everyone has a price, Mr. Reed. Marcus glanced through the glass at Nia, then at the $6 receipt lying beside the certified copy. You called the wrong man. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. What page are you asking for? The answer came too quickly. The last page. The air vent seemed to grow louder. Bernice's hand moved slowly toward the call recording control and pressed it. Marcus asked one final question. How did you know it was moved? The line went dead. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Bernice opened the caller identification panel. The number routed through a law office 3 blocks from City Hall. The account name appeared. Beneath it, Calvin Price, Trust Administration. Amara's face changed before anyone read the line aloud. She sat down carefully, as if the floor had shifted beneath her. You know him, Marcus said. He managed my family's trust after my parents died. Celeste recovered first. Calvin represents many clients. A phone number proves very little. It proves he saw a note only authorized staff were supposed to see, Bernice said. Harold reached for the phone console. We should stop recording until counsel reviews this. Bernice covered the control with her hand. No one touches it. Amara looked at Marcus differently now. Not with full trust, but with the shock of seeing someone refuse money without asking what she could offer instead. She unlocked her phone and placed it on the table. You can look through it. Marcus pushed it gently back toward her. Only give us what you choose to give. Her eyes filled, though no tears fell. Celeste turned toward the hallway, where Ethan stood near the glass doors with his phone in his hand. At that exact moment, the screen lit up. The security camera above the lobby caught the preview of a message from Celeste before Ethan erased it. Did she sign the annex before she caused the scene? Bernice stared at the caller record. Marcus stared at the locked file. And Amara finally understood that the man entrusted to protect her family's future had been watching the city system closely enough to know where a page had supposedly been moved 3 minutes earlier. Calvin Price's name remained on the caller identification screen after the line went dead, clean black letters beneath a number registered to his trust administration office. Amara stared at it without blinking. He knew where the page was supposed to be. He knew within 3 minutes, Bernice said. And he knew which page to ask for. Harold reached toward the telephone console again. This has gone far enough. We need city council before anyone makes accusations. Marcus placed no hand in his way. He simply looked at the recording indicator glowing red beside Harold's fingers. Then council should hear the original. Harold stopped. Beyond the wired glass, Celeste stood. Near Ethan, speaking into his ear while he kept his phone turned toward his chest. Her posture remained graceful, almost maternal, but she checked the security camera twice in less than 10 seconds. Amara lowered herself into the chair at the end of the table. Nia's yellow paper flower rested beside the sealed marriage record, one uneven petal touching the plastic sleeve. Calvin has managed the Whitmore Trust since my parents died, she said. No one spoke at first. Even Harold seemed to understand the weight of the name, though he tried not to show it. Amara's voice stayed low. My legal name is Amara Elise Whitmore. Whitmore Civic Holdings belongs to a family trust. Whitmore Civic Foundation controls the charitable properties, including this building's renovation fund. I am the only surviving beneficiary with full voting rights. Bernice's eyes moved toward the bronze plaque visible through the glass. Marcus did not. He watched Amara's hands. Her right thumb pressed repeatedly against the onyx ring hanging from her neck, rubbing the silver W as though the metal could anchor her to the chair. Why use Brooks? He asked. There was no accusation in the question. It was my mother's maiden name. After the funeral, every introduction became a negotiation. People wanted access, signatures, board seats, photographs. Calvin said privacy would protect me. At first, it did. And Ethan? Bernice asked. Calvin introduced us. Amara swallowed. He said Ethan came from a stable family. He said marriage would stop people questioning whether I was ready to vote on trust matters. Harold adjusted his cuffs. That still does not establish wrongdoing. No, Marcus said. It establishes a reason to preserve what we already have. Amara looked at him. He had not used her identity to humiliate Celeste. He had not walked into the lobby and announced that the woman in the cheap ivory dress owned the name above the counter. He had not even asked what Whitmore Civic Holdings was worth. That restraint, more than the $6 or the refusal of Calvin's offer, began to loosen something inside her. Bernice returned to the access log. The guest badge used at 812 had been overwritten, but the system retained a device identifier beneath the administrative override. She copied it by hand onto a city evidence sheet. Then she opened the legal copy room printer history. At 8:14, the machine had produced 7 pages from an external drive. At 8:16, it had produced a second document marked confidential draft. Can you open the second document? Amara asked. Not without authorization, Bernice said. Harold seized the answer. Then we stop here. Marcus looked through the glass toward the lobby camera. Can you preserve the printer log without opening the document? Bernice nodded. Yes. Then do that. Harold turned to him. You continue to behave as if you are directing an investigation. I'm asking her not to destroy a record. No one is destroying anything. At that moment, Harold's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, silenced it, and placed it face down. Marcus saw only the first line of the sender name before it disappeared. C. Price. The room settled into a deeper quiet. A printer in the outer office finished its cycle and stopped, leaving the hum of the fluorescent tube painfully clear. Bernice preserved the log, then opened the building's guest register. Calvin Price had signed in at 8:05 under the purpose legal consultation. His checkout line was blank. The security feed showed him entering the second-floor corridor carrying a thin leather portfolio. At 8:18, he emerged without it. At 8:21, Celeste appeared from the opposite stairwell. Calvin handed her a cream envelope. The camera angle did not show what was inside. It did show Celeste sliding the envelope beneath the folder she carried into the marriage room. That could be anything, Harold said. It could, Marcus agreed. So we keep going. Celeste entered before anyone invited her. Amara, this is exactly what Calvin warned us about. Public confusion. Outsiders misunderstanding private safeguards. Amara raised her eyes. Did he give you an envelope this morning? Celeste's expression did not break, but the hand holding her phone moved closer to her body. He gave me routine family documents. Was page 7B inside? I do not memorize page labels. Bernice looked up from her notes. You named it in the hearing area. Celeste's lips parted, then closed. Because Ethan mentioned it. Through the glass, Ethan looked away. Bernice searched the city records index for Dignity Brides Initiative, the nonprofit Celeste often mentioned in interviews. The organization had rented municipal rooms for seminars on safe marriage planning. Attached to its most recent reimbursement file was an invoice from a clinical consultant specializing in competency evaluations. The payment description read Beneficiary Stability Review. The funding authorization carried Calvin Price's electronic approval. Amara's face lost what little color remained. He told me the doctor was for grief counseling. Bernice opened the public docket index, not the sealed petition itself. A draft filing had been registered but not submitted, in the matter of the capacity of Amara E. Whitmore. The filing date was scheduled for the Monday after the wedding. Marcus felt anger rise, clean and immediate, but he did not give it a voice. Celeste was still standing close enough for humiliation. Calvin was still monitoring systems. If Marcus exposed every discovery in the lobby now, they would learn exactly what evidence needed to disappear. Do not confront him yet, he said. Amara looked at him sharply. He tried to take control of my life. Then we make the proof stronger than his explanation. You want me to wait? I want you to choose what happens next without giving him time to erase the path behind him. She looked at the sealed license, the receipt, the flower, and the black ring lying together on the table. Slowly, she nodded. Not because Marcus had authority over her, but because he had returned the decision to her. Bernice pulled the hallway footage. The clock showed Calvin entering at 8:09, 4 minutes later than the guest register. Harold immediately pointed to the discrepancy. There. The timeline is unreliable. Marcus studied the screen. That morning's fire alarm test had sounded while Nia was reading outside the maintenance office. He had written the exact time in his shift log because she had covered her ears and asked whether the building was burning. The log read, 7:42. On the camera archive, the alarm lights began flashing at 7:38. The camera clock is 4 minutes slow, Marcus said. Harold stared at him. Marcus removed the small spiral shift book from the side pocket of his cleaning cart. Its cover was softened by years of use, and several pages bore faint water stains. He opened to that morning's entry. Bernice compared it with the automated fire panel report. The times matched exactly once the 4-minute error was corrected. Calvin had entered the copy room at 8:12. The printer had produced page 7B at 8:14, and the envelope had reached Celeste minutes before Amara arrived. One timeline now connected the guest log, printer code, camera footage, and the altered page. Harold wiped his forehead with a folded handkerchief. The camera system is scheduled for emergency maintenance. No, it isn't, Bernice said. She had opened the contractor service log. The next scheduled visit was 3 weeks away. A new deletion request had been entered 2 minutes after Calvin's call. Using Harold's facilities account, Harold's face hardened. My credentials may have been compromised. Then you should want the footage preserved, Marcus said. Bernice placed an emergency records preservation hold on the video, phone recording, printer logs, and access history. Marcus used his old phone only to record the screen showing the preservation confirmation, hash number, and timestamp. He did not record Amara's private documents. Outside, the late morning sun shifted across the lobby windows, turning the bronze Whitmore plaque bright enough to reflect Amara's face. She no longer looked like a woman waiting for someone else to tell her what had happened. She looked frightened, but awake. 1 week later, a certified envelope arrived at Marcus's apartment while Nia was doing homework at the kitchen table. It ordered him to appear at an emergency administrative hearing in the same marriage room where Amara had been abandoned. He read the allegations twice. Unauthorized removal of public records, theft of protected data, and attempted extortion of the Whitmore family. At the bottom, beneath the city seal, Celeste Caldwell was listed as the complaining witness. The marriage room at Riverton City Hall looked smaller with rows of folding chairs facing the counter. A city hearing panel sat beneath the bronze Whitmore Civic Foundation plaque, microphones angled toward 3 officials whose folders were already thick with statements. Reporters occupied the back wall. Celeste Caldwell's organization had placed a white banner near the entrance. Dignity, safety, responsible marriage. Marcus entered wearing the same Navy custodial uniform he had worn the morning Amara was abandoned. The city had not returned his badge, and the empty crease above his pocket seemed more visible than the badge had ever been. Nia walked beside him, holding his hand with one of hers and the yellow paper flower with the other. Bernice met them near the public benches and guided Nia to a seat behind her, away from the cameras. Stay with Ms. Cole, Marcus said. Are they going to say you stole something? Nia asked. They may. But you didn't. Marcus squeezed her hand once. Then I only have to tell what happened. Across the room, Celeste stood with 2 attorneys and several board members from Dignity Brides Initiative. She wore a dark blue suit and no pearls this time, as if simplicity itself could serve as evidence of sincerity. Ethan sat 1 chair behind her, pale beneath the fluorescent lights, his phone sealed in a clear evidence bag on the table before him. Amara entered last with an independent attorney appointed by the probate court, but she did not sit beside him. She chose the chair at the center table where she could face the hearing panel directly. She wore a plain gray dress. The black onyx ring still hung from the narrow chain at her throat, mostly hidden beneath the fabric. Celeste watched her sit, then lowered her eyes with the practiced sorrow of a mother forced to defend her family in public. The hearing began with procedure. Names were entered. Allegations were read. Marcus Reed was accused of removing protected records, accessing restricted data, and attempting to profit from a private family dispute. Celeste's attorney spoke first. He did not call Marcus dishonest. He called him confused. He described a hard-working custodian who had misunderstood a distressed bride, crossed professional boundaries, and then allowed himself to be drawn into matters involving wealth he could not fully understand. The words were gentle enough to sound merciful. "No one is questioning Mr. Reed's intentions," the attorney said. "But good intentions do not authorize a city employee to handle sealed documents or interfere with a vulnerable woman's care plan." Celeste placed a tissue against one dry eye. "I only wanted Amara protected," she said. "She had concealed her identity from my son, refused professional guidance, and became agitated when lawful safeguards were explained." Mr. Reed saw tears and assumed cruelty. He did not see the years of concern behind them. A few heads in the audience nodded. The explanation was calm, complete, and supported by the kind of language institutions trusted. For several minutes, it seemed to settle over every piece of evidence before Marcus had touched the microphone. Celeste's attorney produced a letter signed by a clinical consultant stating that Amara had shown signs of unresolved grief, avoidance, and impaired judgment. He explained that page 7B was not a scheme to steal control, but a temporary protective authorization prepared in anticipation of a medical emergency. "The document was never signed," he said. "Therefore, no harm occurred." The first retention spike landed quietly. The hearing panel chair looked toward Marcus. "Mr. Reed, did you know this document had been prepared by counsel as part of a protective plan?" "No, ma'am." "Did you know Ms. Whitmore had previously met with a competency specialist?" "No." "Did you know the groom's family had been advised to intervene if she became distressed?" "No." Each honest answer seemed to narrow the room around him. Celeste's attorney folded his hands. "Then your actions were based on assumptions." Marcus looked at Amara. She sat upright, but one hand pressed against the edge of the table hard enough to whiten her fingertips. "My action was based on one fact," he said. "She said no when someone tried to take her paper." The room went still enough for a chair hinge to creak near the back. The panel chair nodded toward Bernice. "Proceed with the documents." Bernice carried the first item to the evidence camera. The withdrawal form marked Amara Brooks. Its timestamp appeared enlarged on the wall screen, 8:20 a.m. "The applicant entered the building at 8:31. Bernice said. Celeste's attorney answered immediately. The form was generated in anticipation of a possible withdrawal. Administrative preparation is not misconduct. Harold Pierce, seated at the witness table, confirmed that staff sometimes prepared routine forms ahead of time to prevent delays. The explanation restored movement to the room. Pens resumed scratching. A reporter lowered her camera. For a moment, Celeste seemed to regain control. Then Bernice placed the $6 receipt beneath the camera. This certified copy was issued at 9:02, before the electronic record was locked at 9:04. She displayed the embossed duplicate and the transparent sleeve signed across the seal. The original pages remained in the order received. Mr. Reed did not remove them. He paid the public copying fee, and I handled the record. Celeste's attorney leaned toward his microphone. A custodian directing chain of custody procedures is itself irregular. He did not direct me, Bernice replied. He asked me to document what he touched. I decided that was appropriate. Marcus did not look toward the audience. He placed his cracked brass key ring on the table, though the city had returned only the personal keys after taking the building keys away. I am not here to prove I knew more than I did, he said. I am here so the record cannot be buried under what people think a man in my uniform should understand. The panel chair asked to see page 7B. Bernice displayed the certified copy. The heavier paper, mismatched staple holes, and missing half of the purple intake seal filled the screen. Celeste's attorney argued that the page had been replaced because the first print was damaged. Routine correction, he said. No fraudulent intent. That was the second moment it appeared the explanation might hold. Then Marcus asked one question. Who printed the correction? Harold shifted in his chair. Bernice presented the printer code. The legal copy room log showed the page printed at 8:14, before Amara arrived. The guest access field read administrative override. Next came the recording of Calvin Price's phone call. His voice filled the marriage room. Retrieve the final page from basement storage. Everyone has a price. You are being offered a way out. When the call ended, the air conditioner became the loudest sound in the room. Celeste's attorney rose. An unidentified caller cannot be attributed to my client. Bernice displayed the routing record tying the call to Calvin's office. Mr. Price represents numerous Whitmore interests, the attorney said. His attempt to recover a sensitive document may have been misguided, but it does not establish coordination with Mrs. Caldwell. Bernice brought up the guest log, then the service record showing Calvin's entry into City Hall. The preserved hallway footage showed him carrying a leather portfolio toward the legal copy room. For minutes later, adjusted through the fire alarm service log in Marcus's spiral notebook, Calvin emerged and handed Celeste a cream envelope. Celeste leaned toward her microphone. It contained wedding insurance documents. Did it contain the disputed page? The panel chair asked. I never examined the page closely. Did you know its internal label? No. Bernice displayed a written transcript from the original incident. Page 7B is a private family attachment, Celeste had said before anyone at the counter identified its number. Celeste's breathing changed, so slightly that only the microphone caught it. She reached for her water but did not drink. Ethan mentioned the label, she said. Ethan lifted his head. His attorney placed a warning hand on his arm. The panel chair turned toward him. Mr. Caldwell, when did you first learn the label page 7B? Ethan looked at his mother, then at Amara. That morning. From whom? My mother. Celeste's attorney objected, but the answer had already entered the room. Bernice next displayed the photograph captured by the lobby camera. Ethan's illuminated phone screen. Celeste's message visible before he deleted it. Did she sign the annex before she caused this scene? Celeste's face remained composed, yet one thumb rubbed repeatedly against the side of her index finger. Amara saw it and remembered that same motion from the mornings Celeste had placed new papers in front of her while calling them harmless. Marcus saw Amara's shoulders tighten. He shifted his chair slightly. Not in front of her, not speaking for her, only close enough that she could see someone had not left. The hearing panel reviewed the Dignity Bride's initiative invoice to the competency consultant. Celeste explained that her nonprofit routinely funded counseling for women entering difficult marriages. Then Bernice displayed the draft probate filing scheduled for the Monday after the wedding. The central phrase appeared on the screen, unfit to make independent decisions. It was the exact phrase Celeste had used before the filing became public. The panel chair asked Amara whether she wished her attorney to respond. Amara shook her head and stood. I will respond. Her voice trembled on the first word, then settled. I concealed my legal name. That is true. I did not consent to the annex. That is also true. No diagnosis gave them permission to prepare my withdrawal, alter my file, or decide that marriage transferred my voice to Ethan. Celeste's attorney looked toward the bronze plaque and then back to Amara. You continue to present yourself as someone whose legal identity has not been publicly established. Celeste's control finally thinned. She pointed across the room, then read her name. Let everyone hear who this liar really is. Bernice reached for the marriage license inside the sealed sleeve. She verified the transaction number, the raised seal, and the state record code before lifting it beneath the overhead light. Celeste's attorney stood and demanded that the hearing stop before an unverified identity was spoken into the public record. The panel chair looked at Bernice. Amara held the yellow paper flower Nia had placed beside her hand. Marcus remained seated in his worn uniform, his eyes on the document everyone had tried to take. Bernice lowered her gaze to the legal name printed above the seal, drew one slow breath, and moved closer to the microphone. Amara Elise Whitmore. Bernice's voice entered the microphone without force, yet it carried to the last folding chair in the marriage room. For one suspended second, nothing changed. Then the name reached the bronze plaque behind the hearing panel, and every face in the room seemed to turn toward it at once. Whitmore Civic Foundation. The projector fan kept spinning. A reporter's phone vibrated against the metal leg of her chair. Somewhere near the rear wall, a pen slipped from someone's fingers and struck the tile with a small, hard click. No one bent to pick it up. Celeste's raised hand lowered slowly to the table. Ethan stared at Amara as though the woman he had planned to marry had been replaced in front of him, though she had not moved at all. She still wore the plain gray dress. She still held Nia's uneven yellow flower. The only visible sign of the name Bernice had spoken was the black onyx ring resting against her collarbone, its silver W catching the overhead light. Celeste's attorney recovered first. A name on a document does not establish ownership, capacity, or identity. Bernice did not argue. She placed the marriage license beneath the evidence camera and enlarged the raised state seal, the record code, and the signature field. Then she opened the state verification return from Part 5. The screen displayed Amara's full legal name, date of birth, and identity match confirmation. The name is verified through the state vital record system, Bernice said. The signature matches the archived identification sample. The probate court's representative stood from the side table and submitted a certified trust abstract. It identified Amara Elise Whitmore as the sole surviving beneficiary with full voting rights in Whitmore Civic Holdings and the Whitmore Civic Foundation. A final image appeared on the screen. Amara as a teenager standing between her parents at the foundation's original dedication ceremony, the same onyx signet hanging from her mother's neck. The room did not erupt. It became quieter. That quiet carried more weight than outrage could have. The people who had whispered that Amara was chasing a rich man now avoided one another's eyes. The reporter who had aimed her camera at Marcus when he was accused of extortion slowly turned it toward Celeste. Harold Pierce's folder slipped from his lap, scattering 2 pages beneath his chair. He left them there. Celeste reached for her water glass, but the rim touched her lower lip twice before she managed to drink. "This changes nothing about the concern for her welfare," she said. The sentence came out dry. "It changes who had the legal authority to make decisions," the panel chair replied. "And the evidence suggests that authority was being transferred without her informed consent." Bernice displayed page 7B again. The mismatched staple holes appeared first. Then the missing half of the purple intake seal. Then the printer code from the legal copy room. She placed the $6 receipt beside it, showing that the certified copy had been issued before the record lock. The transparent evidence sleeve followed, its seal still crossed by her signature. "The original remained intact after Mr. Reed requested documentation," she said. "Had that copy not been created, the disputed page could have been removed or replaced after the electronic file was locked." Marcus sat without changing expression. Nia looked up at him from behind Bernice, then released a breath she had been holding and wrapped both hands around the edge of her library book. Marcus gave her the smallest nod. The panel chair ordered the preserved hallway recording played. The projector showed Calvin Price entering the legal copy room with a leather portfolio. The corrected timestamp appeared beneath the footage, synchronized through the fire alarm report and Marcus's water-stained shift log. At 8:14, the printer record showed the disputed annex being produced. At 8:18, Calvin left without the portfolio. Minutes later, he met Celeste near the stairwell and passed her the cream envelope. The next clip showed Celeste entering the marriage room with the envelope hidden beneath Amara's folder. The chair stopped the footage. "Mrs. Caldwell, is that the document you described as wedding insurance?" Celeste looked toward her attorney. "I received several papers that morning. Did you place page 7B into the applicant's packet?" "I do not recall handling an individual page." Bernice resumed the video. Celeste appeared beside the counter while Ethan distracted Amara near the clerk's desk. She removed a sheet from the cream envelope, lifted the back of the packet, and pressed the staple closed with both thumbs. The movement lasted less than 6 seconds. On the screen, her face remained calm. In the hearing room, that same face lost all color. The audio recording of Calvin's call followed. His voice filled the room. "Retrieve the final page from basement storage. Everyone has a price. You are being offered a way out." Marcus listened without looking at Celeste. He had already heard the words. He watched Amara instead, making sure the evidence returning her life to her did not become another public spectacle she had no control over. The final item was Ethan's phone. A technician displayed the recovered message chain. Celeste's question appeared first. Did she sign the annex before she caused the scene? Ethan's reply followed. No. She saw it. What do we do now? Then Calvin's response, forwarded by Celeste. Leave. We proceed Monday on capacity. Ethan closed his eyes. I knew there was an authorization page, he said before his attorney could stop him. My mother told me it was temporary. She said Amara would panic if we explained it before the ceremony. Amara's voice remained quiet. And when I refused? Ethan looked at the table. She told me to walk out so your reaction would be witnessed. The last excuse left the room with that sentence. Celeste opened her mouth, but no explanation came. Her fingers searched for the edge of her folder and found only the smooth tabletop. The panel chair announced the immediate suspension of Harold's system access, referred the altered filing and deletion request to the Inspector General and City Prosecutor, and ordered all records preserved under independent custody. The probate representative confirmed that an emergency petition had already been filed to suspend Calvin Price from trust administration pending a full hearing. Celeste was directed not to contact Amara regarding trust, marriage, or medical decisions. Outside counsel, Ethan's testimony would be preserved under subpoena. The marriage application itself was marked withdrawn at Amara's request, not because anyone had declared her confused, but because she had chosen not to marry him. Only then did Marcus move. Reporters turned toward him, microphones lifting as if the man in the worn custodial uniform had become the story. He stood, pulled the empty chair beside Amara away from the table and set a clean folded tissue near her hand. Then he stepped back. He did not claim that he had known who she was. He did not mention the $6, the lost job, or the walk home with Nia. Amara looked at the tissue, then at Marcus. He did not know my name, she told the room. He did not know what I owned. He only knew I had said no. She faced the plaque behind the panel. My last name made this room silent. It should not have taken my last name to make anyone listen. Marcus lowered his eyes for a moment. The truth had begun moving through courts, agencies, and public records now. It no longer depended on how loudly Celeste spoke or how little people expected from a janitor. But when Amara turned back to him, her expression held no triumph. Only exhaustion, grief, and one question the hearing could not answer. Mr. Reed, she asked, what did standing beside me cost you? The reporters left the marriage room more quietly than they had entered it. Folding chairs scraped against the tile, camera lights clicked off, and conversations that had once followed Amara like judgment now dissolved into careful whispers. Celeste Caldwell was escorted to a side office with her attorney under instructions not to contact Amara directly. Harold Pierce surrendered his system badge before leaving the building. Ethan remained at the witness table long enough to sign a preservation order for his phone, then walked out alone through the same glass doors he had used to abandon his bride. No one applauded. The truth did not need applause. It needed time to become consequence. Marcus stayed near the public benches while Bernice transferred the sealed marriage license, page 7B, the $6 receipt, and the recordings into independent custody. Amara's question still rested between them. What did standing beside me cost you? Marcus looked through the wired glass at Nia, who had fallen asleep with her cheek against Bernice's folded cardigan and her library book open across her lap. A week's pay so far, he said. Maybe the job. Amara waited. And $6, he added. It was the first time she smiled without having to force it. The smile did not last long, but it was real. Why didn't you tell the room? She asked. Because what happened to you was not a receipt for what happened to me. He lifted the narrow strip of paper from the evidence table before Bernice sealed it. The ink had begun to fade where his thumb had pressed it too often. It looked too small to have survived against attorneys, locked systems, and a family trust worth more than he would earn in several lifetimes. Yet that cheap receipt had fixed the truth to a specific minute before anyone could rewrite it. Bernice placed it inside a protective sleeve. This may be the most important $6 this office ever processed, she said. Marcus shook his head. The important part was that she said no. Over the next 3 months, the case moved through systems slower than anger but more permanently. The probate court suspended Calvin Price and appointed an independent trust administrator. The inspector general confirmed that Calvin had used Harold's facilities account to access restricted records and request deletion of the hallway footage. City prosecutors opened investigations into attempted fraud, evidence tampering, and financial coercion. Dignity Bride's initiative removed Celeste from its board, froze its accounts, and hired an outside auditor. The clinical consultant admitted he had been paid to evaluate Amara without being told that his report would support a petition stripping her of decision-making authority. Ethan gave a complete sworn statement. He lost his positions on 2 family boards and accepted that cooperation did not erase the choice he had made when Amara needed him. Amara never returned his calls. She did not humiliate him in interviews or demand that strangers hate him. She sent one message through counsel. I believe. Your apology. I do not owe you another chance. Riverton City Hall restored Marcus to his position with back pay and issued a public letter recognizing his integrity, his respect for consent, and his protection of public records. The letter mentioned neither his military service nor Amara's wealth. That mattered to him. He had not done the right thing because he was secretly powerful. He had done it while carrying a mop, worrying about an electric bill, and knowing the city could replace him by Monday. When the facilities director offered him Harold's old office, Marcus declined. I don't want his chair, he said. I want the next person at that counter to have better rules. Amara heard about the answer from Bernice. A week later, she met Marcus in the employee cafeteria, not in a boardroom. She wore jeans, a plain sweater, and the onyx ring beneath her collar. She placed an envelope containing $6 on the table between them. Marcus did not touch it. I told you that was not a loan. Then let me turn it into lunch. Nia, seated beside him with a grilled cheese sandwich, opened the envelope and counted the bills twice. 3 slices of pie, she decided. 1 for each of us. Amara looked at Marcus for permission before following Nia to the counter. That small pause told him more than any promise could have. She was learning that care did not require taking over. He was learning that accepting kindness did not erase the woman he had loved and lost. Their relationship did not become romance in a week. Amara began therapy with a counselor she chose herself. Marcus started attending a grief group on Thursday evenings after years of saying he was too busy. She joined him and Nia for occasional dinners, but never appeared unannounced and never tried to purchase a place in their home. Nia spoke about her mother freely. Amara listened without trying to replace her. Respect became trust in ordinary increments. A returned phone call, a boundary remembered, a quiet drive home, a meal where no one asked anyone to prove what they owned. Together, Amara, Marcus, and Bernice helped design the Whitmore open-door justice desk inside the same city hall. Every applicant would receive an automatic certified copy. Anyone could request a private consent interview without relatives or attorneys present. Altered documents would trigger an external preservation hold that no facilities manager could cancel. Staff would be trained to recognize financial coercion and understand that fear, grief, or poverty did not make a person incapable of deciding. Amara offered Marcus a large check for his work. He declined it. She offered to name the program after him. He declined that too. He accepted a publicly reviewed advisory position with regular pay because Nia needed stability and because refusing fair compensation would not make his character purer. Open door is enough, he said. People should remember what the place does, not who got noticed first. On opening morning, the $6 receipt hung in a modest frame beside Nia's yellow paper flower and a copy of the new consent policy. The receipt was no longer proof that Marcus had been poor. It was proof that truth could survive when one ordinary person gave up something small to keep it from being taken. Late that afternoon, a young woman entered the lobby with a man speaking over her shoulder. She asked whether she could make one private phone call before signing anything. The receptionist invited the man to wait outside. Marcus pulled out a chair. Amara set a fresh box of tissues within reach. Nia, doing homework behind the desk after school, placed another crooked paper flower beside the telephone, and returned to her math without asking questions. The young woman sat down and began to breathe more slowly. No cameras were present. No one knew her last name. No one needed to. For a moment, the lobby became completely still. Not with shock, but with the quiet understanding that the room had finally learned how to listen. Beyond the glass, evening light moved across the bronze Whitmore plaque, while inside, a worn $6 receipt rested beneath the words "Open Door," showing that dignity never has to shout. Sometimes it waits in an ordinary hand until kindness becomes justice.